And next we have Charles C. Smith, who is the lead for CNERJ. He has spent the past 30 years effecting organizational change through equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism initiatives in various sectors, and he is the perfect person to really just wrap this up in a nice bow.
Thank you. I don't know if a nice bow is possible. I'll do the best I can. It's hard after such wonderful speakers who have spoken so eloquently about the challenges that we know and their energy, their passion, their commitment to not only articulating what those challenges are, but to lay out some of the concrete evidence of why they have existed over the past number of years, linking those to the episodes of European project of colonialism and the incredible impact of disaggregating or of homogenizing, I should say, people of color, people in various communities under one umbrella so that it's easier for governments, but a lot harder for us. I've done a lot of work in the field of anti-racism since 1980, whether it's in community, whether it's in municipal government, whether it's been in the legal profession, whether it's been in universities, whether it's been in the arts, whether it's been dealing with issues of police harassment of Black youth, and so on. This task in front of us is enormous. I can't say it any other way. It's why, not just myself, but when Debbie speaks about Okazi, we're talking about 40, 50 years. We're really talking about 500, 600 years. And I think we've got to put that on the table, as Jose brought to us in terms of the experiences in Mexico, as we know in the United States, and as we know here in the formation of Canada, particularly given the greetings we had at the beginning of the day from Vince, the elder, and from Kevin, etc. We are on land that many people call, rightfully so, stolen. And so the question is, how do we repair? How do we move forward? And what effort can we call it CNERJ, Canadian Network for Equity and Racial Justice? The name came to me one night when I was actually walking my dog. I think she suggested, Charles, synergy. Because we're not trying to take over anything. We're trying to and will work to bring people together, to see what the issues are across various sectors, whether it's in the arts, whether it's in business, whether it's in labor, whether it's in education, whether it's in academia, whether it's in housing, whether it's in employment, whether it's in law enforcement, and so on and so forth, and immigration, whether it's in hate and violence. There are a lot of areas that we have to work together, and the key word, as Dr. Campbell had said to us, was we need to work together. We need to work with collaboration. We need to work with compassion. We need to work with passion, commitment to understand each other, listen to each other, and to be clear and share with each other. And that's what our effort will be over the next couple of years in trying to work with this CNERJ project, both in terms of our experiences across Canada and in collaboration with our partners in Mexico and in the United States. So what does that look like concretely? This is the difficult challenge. We want to work across cities in Canada. In other words, set up local panels, work with local activists in whether it's in Winnipeg, whether it's in Vancouver, whether it's in the Yukon, whether it's in Halifax, whether it's in Montreal, whether it's in Moncton, and of course across the GTA and across Ottawa, to work with local people who are active around these types of issues. Not to move them aside, but to say, how can we support? How can we help you raise issues that you need to raise about your communities? Right? And we want to do that twice in the next couple of years. Not just once, but twice. Capture this information, broadcast this information, collect it so we can advocate around it with and on behalf of communities that we work with. The second thing is that we also need to synthesize the massive amount of materials, research, et cetera, that have been out there for years around academia, around education, and so on and so forth. I don't want to belabor it, but we know we don't need to know new research on what the challenges are. That we have abundance of. What we need now is for individuals and some researchers to come together and say, here are the key issues that we are addressing in those areas we want to address, whether it's housing, whether it's employment, whether it's immigration, whether it's hate. And to do so in a way that disaggregates the data. It's not just that visible minorities is a very inappropriate term. Even the term racialized, even the term people of color, we are different. Persons of African descent differ from those from South Asians, differ from those who are Asians, differ from those who are Middle Eastern, Arab, etc. We face discrimination in different ways. And we need to recognize that so that our responses speak to it directly, not in a homogenized way that, well, if we do something for a person of color, we've done something for all people of color. That is not the answer. It has never been the answer. All of this has to lay on a foundation of certainly truth and reconciliation, of how do we work with Indigenous peoples as we move forward in this initiative? How do we recognize, and I remember this years ago when I did some work with Native Child and Family Services in Toronto, and the founder of that said, it's wonderful that we can work together, but as Indigenous peoples, there is an issue of land, there is an issue of culture, there is an issue of languages, and there is an issue of nationhood. Very different than me as a person of African descent. We have to accept that, understand it. How do we work with it? How do we become allies? How do we become collaborators? So on. So our goal over the next little while, and we certainly want to invite you to participate with us, is to begin to have sessions like this across the country, to work with local communities so their leaders, their activists can come forward. And to begin to, as I said, collate that information so that we can get a picture across the country of who is doing what, where, when, and how. How are they looking at the issues? And can we then advance the conversations so we're no longer talking about these homogenized terms, visible minorities, people of color. We can talk specifically about people of African descent, specifically about people of South Asian descent, specifically about people of Asian descent, and so on and so forth, and what the challenges are that they are facing, and what some of the solutions are that we need to bring forward so they can address it. Post-COVID, and pre and post-COVID, because we have to remember George Floyd and the number of deaths in both of persons of African descent, both in the United States as well as here, through policing and so on. But the issues of racism and discrimination have grown quite dramatically, which, as we heard earlier from the parliamentary secretary, with the crisis in the Middle East, we're seeing more. Seeing more. The world right now is on fire. We have a job. So how do we preserve the planet? How do we grow as a people? What do we need to do together to get there together? Because if we're not going to get there together, we're not going to get there at all. And that's the hope that CNERJ has to inspire all of us toward that goal of recognizing who we are as individuals, as communities, specifically to roll up our sleeves and to commit to work together in collaboration. Thank you.